I worked as a flight attendant for a few years when I decided to take an extended sabbatical from college. There were a handful of bad situations that I'd encountered, but one in particular still makes my skin crawl more than any other. I was born and raised in Texas, but had moved to New York when I was 21. So when I found out at the beginning of a week-long trip that I'd have a couple of overnights in Austin, I was super excited to go to my home state for a few days. My brother lived just north of the city, and we planned to hang out and go to dinner the night that I had arrived when he got off work. And the following day, we were going to meet up with our dad who lived about an hour away. So I get to the hotel downtown, the crew and I check in, and then we each head off to our own rooms. A short elevator ride and I get to mine. We're not even 5 minutes later, there's a loud hard knock on the door. It was only around 1 or 2 p.m. and I hadn't called either my dad or brother to let them know that I was in town yet, so they wouldn't know what room. I assumed it was maybe one of my crewmates, so I headed to the door. Before even making it to the door, however, a loud, male voice on the other side boomed. "The front desk sent me about the bathroom problem you called in," before trying to open the door. "Unlock the door and open up. Miss, I need in, now." I froze in my tracks. I hadn't even been in the bathroom yet, let alone called anything to the front desk. I'm a petite chick, and while I'd take no crap from anyone despite my size, I still err on the side of caution. Slowly inching toward the door to look out the people, all I could tell was that the man on the other side was at least 6 feet tall, and easily over double my weight. No way I was going to unlock that door. I responded to the guy, telling him he must have had the wrong room. He continued pounding on the door while constantly turning the handle, telling me no, he needed in, and he was getting in the room one way or another. I panicked, but thankfully had the sense to grab the phone and call the front desk. The concierge confirmed that they had neither sent anyone up to my room, nor had they received a call about the bathroom. The entire time this guy was still determined to get in my room, pounding and yelling. Lucky for me, the front desk had dispatched security to my floor. When these security officers stepped off the elevator a few seconds later, I could hear them in the hall approach and ask the guy who he was, what he was doing, and telling him that he needed to leave the hotel. He immediately gets hostile and aggressive toward them, and the front desk clerk I'm still on the phone with tells me police have been called and that they're on their way. In the meantime, I'm trapped in my room, scared out of my mind. Long story short, the cops show up pretty quickly and manage to arrest the guy for trespassing and criminal menacing or something. I later found out that the guy was also wanting a connection to a string of break-ins in Austin. He had seen and stalked me from the minute that I had entered the hotel lobby. Apparently, I was exactly his type of victim. Nothing else happened after that, but it still rattled the heck out of me for the rest of my stay in that hotel. 2 years ago, my husband and I flew to LA for a weekend getaway. We stayed at a boutique hotel off of Sunset. It's more of a hipster type place. Not normally somewhere I would stay, but it was nice, clean, and had a good vibe. We met up with our friends who live in LA and went out for dinner and drinks. It was a late night and we came back to the hotel. I was exhausted and jet lagged. It was around 1:30 in the morning or something like that. My husband is a very deep sleeper. I'm an extremely light sleeper, except when I've had a bunch of drinks, which I had definitely consumed that night. So it was lights out for both of us very quickly. Around 3 a.m., I only know the time after everything has happened, I wake up suddenly and open my eyes. There's a light on in our room. The room had been totally dark when we went to bed. The light came from the doorway, which illuminated the silhouette of a man standing at the foot of the bed, just standing there staring. For a moment I'm speechless, confused and also slightly intoxicated. I haven't yet moved. My reaction is delayed, and then the stark fear and reality kick in. I gasp and say, "What the heck?" The man was wearing a red plaid shirt and had dark hair and a beard. I couldn't make out his features as my eyes were adjusting to waking up, and the lighting that illuminated him shadowed half of his face. The man says, "I need to speak with Drake." I know this may sound somewhat comical, but I assure you at the time it was terrifying. I scream, "Get the heck out!" which jolts my husband awake, who immediately sits up and sees a man at the foot of our bed. My husband is 6'5", which may not be evident given half his body is underneath the bedding, but either way, the man responds, "Oh, sorry, wrong room," and bolts out, slamming the door behind him. My husband jumps up and runs for the door, but I stop him from going outside into the hallway. Who knows if the man is waiting there trying to lure him out, or whether there are other men out there ready to pounce. I keep looking through the people, but don't see anything. At this point, we are both shocked and in disbelief and probably still drunk. We call down to the front desk. No one answers. We call repeatedly and still, no one answers. We contemplate what to do and, around 20 minutes later, we decide to get dressed and go down to the front desk. There is an employee at the front desk and there's also a bar in the lobby. My husband walks around to see if he can spot the guy who was in our room, and as he's searching, I go up and start telling the guy behind the front desk what had happened. But as I begin the story, I burst into tears. I realize how shaken up I am. The employee gets the manager and he asks me what time the man came in the room and so on. But I don't know how long he was standing there until I woke up and saw him. I think he must have been there for a long time, just waiting for me to wake up. My husband also came back empty-handed. We got back up to the room, and the next day, the manager calls and says that there wasn't anything on the security cameras. I didn't believe him. He offers us one free night to the hotel as compensation, even though he claims he didn't see anything. We take the free night because what else is there to do? We just want to go about the rest of our mini vacation. Why was this man in our room? How did he have a working keycard? But the thought that I had the most trouble with, what would have happened if I hadn't woken up? Our door was locked, but clearly someone had a duplicate keycard. Here's what I've learned. If you don't already, always put the deadlock on your hotel room door. It's something we've never thought to do, and now I always check it, twice. This happened in the summer of 2010, when I was just entering my teenage years. My family took a trip to a really nice hotel in the city. I can't really remember why we decided to take the trip, but I remember a lot of family friends coming with and staying in adjacent rooms. I've never asked my parents, and it's not really important to the story. To preface, I'm a bit of a scaredy cat and always have been. I'm a pretty skinny, fragile kid, so I get spooked pretty easily, even now. This, however, was almost definitely not me freaking myself out like I normally did. Looking back, I'm incredibly lucky I trusted my instincts. This hotel had a strange design to it. The lobby was actually on the 4th floor, not the bottom floor, which I found strange. To access the lobby, you had to use the elevator. There was no way for you to get to it from the stairs. This information would have been nice before everything happened, as you'll find out. The hotel was organized in a square shape. Every floor was lined with a balcony, and you could look down into the lobby and cafe area from your floor. Essentially, if you are walking to your room, you could be seen from anyone that was on your floor if they just stepped out of the room and looked around. I was always afraid I would fall over the balcony and sail down 8 stories to my death, but they were high enough to a point where I wasn't concerned for my safety. The first day was nice. My friends and I hung out and played cards all day, or we watched whatever was on TV. At night, we would explore the halls of the hotel and tell each other ghost stories. It was a really fun time. even though I didn't fully understand why we were there. On the third day though, things got strange fast. I woke up to the sound of screaming coming from outside my door. Now, because of the hotel's design I mentioned, sounds from the lobby would echo all the way up to the top of the building. So when I walked outside to investigate, I immediately looked over the balcony to see what the commotion was about. I saw a girl laying on the ground, eggs and milk splattered everywhere around her. And people were rushing to help her, and I heard a couple people telling each other to call 911. It seemed like the girl was unconscious. Maybe she had passed out or something. I scanned the lobby and saw that my family and a couple of my friends were in the lobby getting breakfast, all staring at the event in front of them. I decided that I would rush down to meet them to find out what had happened. The elevator was on the opposite side of my floor, so I took the stairwell located right next to my room. We were on the 7th or 8th floor, so I knew I only had to take about 4 flights down. Not a big deal. I descended for a little while, looking for the number 4 on the wall or the letter L. I passed floor 5, ready to find a door to the lobby. I took about 2 more flights of steps before realizing that there hadn't been a door for the 4th floor, nor had there been a door for the 3rd or 2nd. Now at this point, I probably should have turned back, but I continued down because I was tired and I didn't want to climb back up. There were some weird side hallways that went into pitch black areas with a bunch of piping and wiring, and though I was curious to explore, I passed them by. I quickly hit the bottom floor, a dimly lit and cold room with cinder block walls and concrete flooring. In front of me was a set of double doors. I hesitated at first, but I assumed that this was just another way to get back to the lobby, so I opened them and entered. Behind the doors was a massive warehouse-type room, probably the size of a smaller basketball stadium. The only light coming in was from the stairwell behind me, so I wasn't really able to see much. Stairs were stacked and covered in plastic, tables lined the wall, and in the distance, I thought I could see boxes stacked in line against the wall as well. It was probably the storage room of the hotel. I looked around and saw an elevator in the back of the room, so I made my way towards it. I closed the door to the stairwell and began to walk in the dim light. The room was super muggy and dusty, and it seemed like nobody had been down there for a long time. As I got closer to the elevator, I noticed it was a little bigger than the elevators in the lobby and other floors. I pressed the up button, but got no response. There was a card swiper next to the button. It must have been for employees only, I thought, and I turned back towards the stairwell doors, making my way past the chairs and tables along the wall. When I got to the door, I gave it a tug. Locked, of course. This is when things started to hit me, and I realized that I was stuck in the dark, dusty basement of a hotel. I didn't have a phone because my parents wouldn't let me get one until I graduated middle school, so I couldn't call anyone. Everyone likely assumed I was still asleep in the room, so I began freaking out, believing that nobody was going to look for me. I searched around the warehouse, looking for other ways out. Some areas of the place were better lit than others, so I looked around in areas that I could see first before starting on the darker side of the room. There was one other set of doors that I found, but it happened to be locked as well. I began to cry, scared that nobody would ever find me in this basement. I swear that it felt like hours, but I think only a handful of minutes passed before the door creaked open. It wasn't the door from the stairwell, rather the second door that I had found. A slim, middle-aged man in a lab coat came out of the doors. Now, if this was a 21-year-old me seeing this, I would be very confused as to why this guy was wearing a lab coat in a hotel. I was only 12 or 13 at the time, so I was immediately relieved at the sight of an adult who looked smart. I approached him, tears in my eyes, and he immediately looked surprised to see me, as you would expect. "What are you doing down here?" he yelled. I got lost on my way down to the lobby and I've been locked in here. Do you have a key? I was shaking, eager to get out of there. He didn't answer my key question, and instead he said, I know a way out of here, follow me. He began to walk towards the doors of the stairwell and I followed, relieved that someone had finally come to save me. We approached the doors and I began to reach for the handle, but he continued walking. Isn't it right here? I asked him. I'll never forget the look in his face when I said that. He looked nervous, and though it was dim, I could see sweat glistening from his forehead and behind his glasses. No, this way, he said sternly. I continued to follow him, but I was now nervous myself. We had passed the door to the stairs and we were now headed towards a darker side of the basement away from the elevators. He looked like he had no clue where he was leading me, as he kept checking around him, almost as if he was taking in his surroundings for the first time. We turned a corner and began walking towards the boxes, a dead end. I immediately froze, realizing that something was very, very wrong. This guy had no idea where he was going, nor did he appear to work at the hotel. I said, my voice shaking, Okay, where are we going? He turned and said, This way, just follow me. I knew that there were no doors by those boxes. I had checked there first after I had found out the stairwell door was locked. I wanted to thank whatever God is out there for gifting me with the idea that I had next. I started yelling as loud as I could. I yelled so loud that I gave myself a headache. The man, irritated and plugging his ears, began yelling back at me. What are you doing? Be quiet. I continued to yell. I don't even remember how long I was yelling. Finally, the man snapped and began quickly walking towards me. I went in a full sprint towards the stairwell doors, hoping to God they would somehow be magically open. He didn't run after me. He walked sternly behind me, muttering things like stupid and other kind of compliments. I was about 5 feet from the door when somebody burst through, my savior, a hotel janitor who had heard the screaming from the stairwell. He saw the situation, me and some random guy in a lab coat in a locked basement, and immediately told me to get behind him. The janitor asked me who the man was, and I said I had no idea, that he had come in through the door on the other side of the room, and I pointed to the door. The janitor quickly radioed into the desk that he had found a child in the basement, and quietly so that I wouldn't hear. He said, This man came from outside, get security, or something like that. The man in the lab coat started trying to argue with the janitor, claiming that he was simply looking for a bathroom. The janitor clearly wasn't buying it, and he kept saying things like, Wait till security gets here and talk to them about it. I was standing beside him the whole time, trying to take in what was happening, confused out of my mind. Eventually, an employee from the front desk arrived and took me back to the steps of the lobby, where I met with my family who surprisingly had no idea I was missing. I told them the story, crying and shaking, and they hugged me tightly, thanking the employee over and over again for their help. I never got to thank that janitor though. Looking back now, I have absolutely no clue what that man was doing in the basement. I don't have any information as to what happens afterwards or who he was. I know for a fact that the incident with the girl in the lobby was unrelated. Something about low blood sugar. Not sure. I've thought about that day a lot, and the only explanation I can put together is that the door that I had found in the basement lead to the streets of the city, where he must have wandered from. I have no clue what his intentions were, why he was wearing the lab coat, or why he chose to pretend to know a way out. To be frank, this could have just been a huge misunderstanding of some sort, and I just chose a really bad time to get lost. But all I know for sure is if I hadn't screamed my lungs out, I might not have been telling this story the same way, or at all. So, a strange man in a lab coat wandering around a dark, dusty hotel basement. Let's not meet.